Welcome to the whirlpool of the unsolved. I'm the host, Frank. Thanks for tuning in. Here I talk about unsolved cases, mysteries, unsolved crimes, and more, from some of the most popular cases known to the ones that aren't really spoken much about. So I hope you enjoy the show. In today's episode, we will be talking about the case of the disappearance of Mary Badaracco. Now, before I get into this case and things like that, I do want to appreciate everyone that's still been tuning in and actually listening into the older episodes. It's been a while since I've actually recorded an episode and actually put out any content on this podcast. And for those people that's been waiting for an episode and has been tuning in and listening, I really appreciate you guys, because it's you guys that really more than likely keeps me going, because it's not hard, it's not easy, it's really hard when it comes to podcasting and putting content out, especially when I have a job and a lot of other things that goes on a daily life. So I appreciate your guys' support and you guys actually listening and all that good stuff. So I just want to say thank you. And I promise that I'm going to do better in making sure that I put content at least once a week. And if anything happens, to keep you guys updated as well. Thank you. Gone. Disappeared with no one knowing anything. Escaping a long marriage of abuse and unhappiness. No words of where she was going to her children or anyone close to her. But the thing is, did she really just up and leave? Nothing really indicates such a thing, from her ex-husband claiming her running off with money as well as them being in agreement to divorce. Nothing to prove such a thing. With little to go by and little to prove, she ran off. This case turned into a homicide case quickly, but not quick enough. Still unsolved, with little to go on, this case is starting to look more solvable as the years go on. But what truly happened to Mary Badaracco? Now, first and foremost, I do want to say, if I'm mispronouncing this name, forgive me, but I do read it as Badaracco. It's probably Italian or something, and the double C's are like a ch sound, so it's probably Badaracco or something like that, but I'm just going to pronounce it as that. So the victim that we're talking about today is Mary Badaracco. She was 38 years old when she disappeared. So she wasn't that old. She was still pretty young, if you ask me. And she just up and disappeared, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. Now, the location of this incident, well, we can say incident, but at least from what we know, the location where she was last seen before she was so-called leaving was her home in Sherman, Connecticut. That was the last known place of her being seen by anyone, which was technically her husband. Now, keeping in mind all of this, being that was the last place that she was seen, and she was seen by her husband, it gives us little to really go on, in the sense of, like, we can probably pinpoint that this guy did something to her when we go further along in what may have happened. But the truth of the matter is that when I read this case, when I watched some documentaries and read some articles and things like that, I was like, man, like, why don't they just take this guy in? Because in reality, it's almost like it's right there. It's right there. And I understand that lack of evidence and all that stuff plays a big part when it comes to, having a suspect and arresting a suspect and going further along that road. But still, I feel like they could have squeezed something out of him if they really tried to, but we're not going to go there right now. Now, when it comes to this case, I say it's really strange. And you can have an idea what may have happened, when we go into further in this case. I have spoken to some people about this case, and we all kind of agreed to what may have actually happened. And it goes back to me thinking and us thinking that her husband had something to do with it. Okay, that's just the truth. This case really does make you think about theories and reasons for almost immediately. Like, this is definitely one of those cases, because what happens to Mary, though it's unsolved, you can kind of pinpoint what may have happened knowing a little bit more of the situation, okay? And that's just the truth. Now, what really did happen, we don't know. Don't anybody know. We can only have our opinion, our theories, and go based off that. We only have our speculations and a little bit of information, which is almost nothing. But there is still a story here. So let's talk a little bit about Mary, okay? So, and at least what we know for sure about her. So from what we know about her and her husband is little, honestly. I've read little articles. This isn't like the biggest case that you can possibly find. So like you really have to dig in deep just to get some information. So I did have to dig a little bit when it came to this case, just to kind of get some information and make sure that the information I got was really something that I can go based off and be like, okay, yeah, I'm comfortable speaking about this. So she met her husband, who her husband is Dominic. So this is Dominic Badaracco, okay? Badaracco. She met her husband in the late 60s. She was a barmaid, and he was actually a bar owner. From what I was reading, he could be a charmer, and basically he charmed his way into Mary's heart. That's basically how it is. And let's be honest, we've all been there before, where whether you're a female, male, or whatever, you've all been there before. If you're a charmer, you could charm yourself into anybody's hearts. You know the right words to say, the right actions to do, just to get the attention, the full attention, and make sure that you lock it down, in other words. So this is definitely, he really did that, okay? They eventually got married in 1970, bringing together their family, okay? Dominic with his 4 children and Mary with her 2 daughters. Now, out of the 4 children, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Dominic had 3 boys or 2 boys. Mary only had 2 children that were girls, so she had 2 daughters. The marriage itself was nothing from what was known as a beautiful one. And what I mean by that, it wasn't the people that knew Mary and knew Dominic, mainly on Mary's end, they knew that it wasn't all roses. There was abuse in the home. They knew that, okay? With some of her coworkers actually claiming that she would at times come to work with a black eye, or she would just come to their place with a black eye. So now we know already that Mary, though she got married, she was charmed by this man, this bar owner. He was abusive, and in one of the articles it said something about like a weird Brady Bunch, like the family created a weird Brady Bunch-esque type thing, and it kind of makes sense later down the road. So basically she was in an abusive relationship, and that says a lot. I'm just being honest, because when you're in an abusive relationship, that kind of leads to other things, and this is already scary, okay? She also had friends, one of her close friends, say that Mary would actually take her children at times and try to escape Dominic. This is how bad the abuse was. Now, what happens next is truly a mystery, but it goes back to that gut feeling of knowing what may have happened to her. So I'm just going to break it down and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So apparently, Mary one day just got up, uh, took about $100,000 and just ran off. Okay. Leaving her children and her husband. But then again, that's what Dominic said. And let me sit here and say this. If nobody, and I'm pretty sure, and I'm just probably dipping my fingers in this situation probably a little bit earlier, but I just want to sit here and say this. If there's abuse and your wife, and let's be honest, you're a man, you're not, a person in general shouldn't be dumb, in the sense of not expecting the other person that you are abusing not to go to somebody at some point and talk to another person about the abuse that is ongoing in the home. Like, I think it's dumb if you think that that will never occur. So my whole thing is this, is that if Mary has gone to her friends and from what it looked like, it's more than a few times, and even tried to escape this madman, right? What makes you think that Mary wouldn't tell her friends about, they were working on, separating, and that she was just planning to up and leave? And as well as when I was reading the articles, it showed me a relationship that Mary had with her daughters. So now you're not only taking into context the fact that she didn't say anything to any of her friends, but she didn't say anything to her daughters, which I'm pretty sure at this time her daughters are adults, which technically they were, and she wouldn't even have gone with them, at least to get her life together. You get what I'm saying? If it was just one of those situations, I'm just saying before we go any further, okay? He claims she did that. That's what he claimed, okay? That before that occurred, that they were having conversations about a detailed divorce. So he's saying, we had that they were having conversations about, basically who was gonna get what, and how much was gonna be given, and all this stuff. So that they were apparently talking about a detailed divorce, okay? They were married for about 15 years or so before this all went down. So they've been married for quite some time, okay? They've been married for quite some time before this all occurred. Her leaving, basically missing, happened August 19th of 1984, which apparently was a day that would be so this is what I read, and I probably wrote this wrong in my notes, but from what I read, they considered that day the day that she apparently had either left or went missing, which, let's be honest, she went missing. That day was practically a nice day to dump a body. That is what the article said. So just kind of giving you an image and things like that. It was an ugly forecasted day. It was raining. It was muggy. That day was hideous. So that's what it meant by, a nice day to dump a body, which is crazy to even picture that, and to picture that she actually disappeared on a day like that. I'm just saying. I know how to add 1 + 1 = 2. The only thing that was left of hers apparently was her keys, her wedding ring, and what was probably to be a parting gift to her husband, Dominic. But this all felt almost like a setup of some sort. And I go into why it felt somewhat like a setup. So makes no sense. She leaves her car keys, she leaves her car. Hold on, where we're at. She left her car, her keys, her wedding ring, and what was probably to be a parting gift to her husband. To me, and we go into like the car, because she actually leaves her car as well. And it amazes me how you would leave all that money and not take your car. I'm just saying. Dominic even called her oldest daughter one day to have her meet him up at the house to break the news that her mother had left him. So not only is he saying, like, yo, she left me, but the fact that he calls his stepdaughter, right, and tells his stepdaughter, like, yeah, hey, can you meet me at the house? I need to talk to you. And then when she shows up, yeah, your mom left me, by the way. But that makes no sense, if you at least ask me. Now, it kind of does if he continued to be abusive and the abuse was a little bit too much and she did decide to take that money and go. But then again, in one article, and this is going back and forth for a few articles, one article says $100,000, another article says things that were worth up to $100,000. So I really don't know exactly what was it, if it was probably, like $50K in cash and then another $50K in whatever was worth that much. But my thing is, regardless of what, how do you leave your car? You know what I mean? Especially if you're trying to escape an abusive man and run away from abusive men, I'm pretty sure it's much quicker to jump into your car and just leave. So yeah, that was really weird. In court for the divorce after she had left, it was again said that she had just left him. She just got up and left him, allowing him to be fully divorced. So eventually in the court, they basically said, okay, she abandoned him. He's good to go. He's 100% free. They're going to be divorced, okay? Which is crazy if you ask me. But the thing about Dominic and the Badaracco name, so this is something that I want you to hear seriously, because this actually puts me into the belief of something really did happen here. Okay, so the Dominic and his family, the Badaracco, that name in general, okay, is that there's rumors that it's a dark name, right? It's very dark. Like, that family has some dark rumors and secrets that follow it around. Like, that name has a lot of things that is basically attached to it. There's rumors of murder within the family and being part of Hell's Angels, which you would consider a group or a gang, and things you wouldn't want to be associated with in general. And this is a guy that, he had his own bar. And from, I think, another article that I read, he had more than one bar. So I don't know. That says a lot. Mary went missing and never found. So, Mary ended up just poof, gone. And she was never found. Though Dominic said she left. Plenty of people believe she would have left without telling her daughters anything. On top of that, she's never been heard from again. No real evidence she left as well. Only the words from an abusive husband with a name that spoke volumes of him and his family. Listen, this is a man that is known for abusing. There's proof of the abuse, not only physical, but verbal proof from other witnesses that known that this man was an abusive man in general. So now you have that, and you have this situation where this woman just gets up and go, okay? Just gets up and go, man. Like, this is wild. I'm not saying that women don't do this and things like that, because it does happen. I'm not saying that it will never happen. It does happen, but it's just strange to me that this woman left her car, and just took this money and left, when apparently, from what he is saying, is that they were coming to an agreement on a detailed divorce. Now, can it have been an ugly conversation, like it went from a regular conversation to an argument. It may have been that case. That may have happened. But my whole thing is that if she had the time, whatever time she had to get up and go, grab that money, grab whatever it was that was worth that much or whatever the case may have been, and just grab it and still have time to go and flee. My whole thing is, why didn't she grab her car keys and left with her car? What, he was going to track her down? Listen, she could have driven off to her daughter's house or driven off to like a Greyhound bus stop, left her car. I mean, there could have been so many other outcomes. And that would lead us to believe that she actually did that. But there is little to no proof whatsoever that she did that. And my biggest thing is her not saying anything to her daughters. Like, it amazes me because a parent that loves their kids that much, as much as she loved her kids, because think about it, if she didn't care much about her kids and she ran off, I mean, she tried to escape her abusive husband all those times when the kids were younger. I don't see her actually taking her kids or anything like that. And, to be honest with you, in the articles, they're actually having a conversation with one of the daughters. So clearly, they're whatever situation they may have had, I doubt that it would have been great enough or big enough that Mary wouldn't have spoken to at least one of her daughters on what she was planning to do or what she did after she did what she did. Makes no sense. I'm just saying. I wrote a whole bunch of stuff, but in reality, I don't even feel like all of it is necessary in general. But there is some stuff. So before I get into his sons, because I do want to talk a little bit about her daughter. So one thing is that which I didn't talk about earlier, but this is something as well to kind of put in your head and in your mind and really try to understand and create your own theory. Because to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure anybody that's listening right now has already their own theory or their own opinion or thought of what may have happened. Now, her daughter, when she had went to the house that day, Dominic had called her to let her know, right, that, her mother had left her. She decided to go into her mother's room to grab her stuff, okay? But there was nothing in the drawers at all. The drawers were empty, okay? At all. Nothing in there. Which was strange because her mother's car was left behind, which I go back to saying that is strange. That is super strange. As well as all the photos of her mother and her sister were all taken down, which made almost no sense. It makes no sense. How are you going to take all your clothes from all your drawers, all the photos? What, a taxi? You're going to take that all in a taxi when you have your own car? Like, yeah, it's very plausible. Like, it can happen. But why would anybody do that? That's what I'm saying. Like, there's just strange things. And the thing is that this happened so long ago and nobody has ever come up and said, hey, I'm Mary. You know what I mean? Like, I would think even if she was on her deathbed or something like that, that she would, speak up and speak truth. That hasn't been the case. There is no evidence of Mary Badaracco that she's alive or she did leave or even if she's dead. Okay? Like, that's wild. So just imagine that this has happened. And I'm being honest with you. And the fact that, her daughter, when she went into her mother's room, she didn't find anything in the drawers. I would expect that a woman that apparently just got up and left her car, her keys and, her wedding ring and things like that. Because I believe that if you're leaving your wedding ring, you're leaving your car, that's almost like you saying, I don't need anything from you. And if that's the case, why not? Why take all your clothes? You get what I mean? Like, I would understand if she decided, like, oh, I don't need anything from you. I don't even want the car. I don't want any of this. But let me just take clothes for the week, so at least I have something to wear until I can figure out what I'm going to do. I have $100,000. As a matter of fact, you don't even need clothes if you have 100K, especially during that time. She had enough to possibly buy a house with no problem and still have money for clothes and try to figure her life out. But there was no clothes whatsoever in the drawers, no photos of her or, her daughters, nothing. There was nothing there except her car keys, her car, and her wedding ring. And I guess a parting way gift to Dominic, which still doesn't sit well with me, and it doesn't bode well with me. And I think that's just something that he may have said or created just to make it seem like he didn't do anything. Now, to kind of talk about his kids, and it's not much. I didn't have much about his kids, but I just wanted these little things that I do have here is almost a quick reminder of how they were or how they are. And you can kind of get an idea of why the Badaracco family has such a bad name. Okay? So he had a son named Joey. They got into trouble. Joey, he went to prison, I think it was, he went to prison for hiring two guys to burn down a bar that was a competitor of his father's. Okay? So Joey, as you can tell already, bad dude. You hiring somebody to burn somebody else's property down just because he was a direct competitor to your pops. I get it. But that just kind of gives you an idea of his character. Dominic Jr., he was actually fatally shot in 1997 during the Super Bowl Sunday after a drunken confrontation that was connected. Now, this kind of tells you a little bit of the drama that's going on. That was connected to his brother Joey, being that his brother ex-wife, the mother of his children, threw a drink on Dominic. Meaning that, the day that basically Dominic Jr. died, there was a confrontation. That confrontation had a little bit of family feud, family in it, because the woman that apparently he was, arguing with threw a drink at his face was actually Joey's ex-wife, ex-girlfriend, ex-baby mama, whatever you want to call it. It was something, she was somebody to the family as well in that sense. And, Dominic Jr. ended up dying. He was shot. He was killed. Now, like I said, this boils down to the characteristics of, Dominic's family, from what was said about that family and how that family is, as well as how certain things are. So, we don't know any other dark rumors or secrets or whatever the case may be, but just seeing how his kids and seeing the characteristics there and knowing that Dominic himself was an abusive man and a man that clearly didn't care, it really puts you to think, what did happen to Mary Badaracco? It really makes you wonder if he had something to do with it. Whether he did it himself or he, like his son, hired somebody to do something to her. The sad truth is, we may never know. Or maybe, just maybe, we'll find out. I know that there were other articles of possibly finding another car and a body and things like that, but that is something that I didn't want to dig in, because that's something that wasn't guaranteed. And when it goes into those type of things, it's one of those things where it makes me at least dig too far deep and really, how do I say, confuse myself. Because so in any case, you can find a body anywhere in the area. But if you can't confirm that that body is the victim's body, then it means, and forgive me that I say this, but it almost means nothing. And the reason why I say that is because now you're just tempted to jump and believe that that body is Mary's, when in reality it isn't. Then it's going to push you to have additional theories and all this. No, I want to know the corpse. Who's the corpse? Who's the car? Is it related? If it's not related, then there's no reason to put it here. So, with that being said, I do hope you enjoyed this episode of Whirlpool of the Unsolved. Check in next week for a new episode, and make sure that you like the podcast and follow the social media pages. Instagram at Whirlpool of the Unsolved Podcast, Twitter at WOT Unsolved Pod, and Facebook page. Now, like I said, thank you for listening. Really, thank you for all those that continue to listen when I haven't created or haven't put up any new episodes. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I appreciate your motivation in continuing to do this. So, till next time.